let me present you my baby, my passion project, my first zine, Everything Gothic. So I was so proud. I wanted to make one for so long. Very short intro, and then I will go into my zine. Last year I took a graphic design course in spring, and when we were talking about making portfolio when you don't have any real work, we were told we can use our passion projects. And we're shown example where a person made a seasonal zine, so a zine for each season, and it showcased both their skills, but also the consistency in following specific style and variations. So I was really excited, but then it postponed. In autumn, I started writing a text and researching the topic, but in my head, I needed to do it like an article, find correct sources, supporting, quote things perfectly. And a few days ago, I finally did it. I did it in Canva. It was actually not that hard, and I'm really proud. So what is zine? Zine is type of self-published magazine. I'm not sure all self-published magazines are zines, but zines can be very different format. However, one of the most famous ones is a one-page zine. So you take one page, you fold and cut it, there are different ways, and then you have a small booklet. This is 8-page zine. It also, I used a back of the page to have some poster. So anyway, it's very easy to make, and because you can then scan and print as many as you want. They were also very popular with protest communities. I don't know all the history, but it's actually very exciting. So let's go into my research and my excitement. Why I decided to research Gothic? Because I love Gothic architecture. It's probably, I cannot say my most favorite, but one of my most favorite architecture. As turns out, during researching, I like Gothic literature. And when I described my desired style for myself, I used word Gothic, but I never exactly knew definition of the word. So I wanted to research, and I started with research on the origin of this word. So first mentioned in 3rd century AD, there was this Germanic people, a Germanic tribe of people, Goth, and they heavily contributed to the fall of Western Roman Empire and emergence of medieval Europe. However, they have very little to do with Gothic anything, because during Renaissance period there was a guy, he was named Giorgio Vasari. He was Italian architect and historian who used word Gothic as an insult synonym to barbaric, because it was perceived that medieval period was chaotic, unenlightened, and superstitious. So it happened in 1530s. And later it was reused and became a staple word. So Gothic architecture happened between 12th and 16th century. It originated in France, but was popular all over Europe. And it wasn't called Gothic. It wasn't actually properly defined as separate style, but it was called by contemporary people of the period Opus Franciganum, French work, Opus Modernum or Novum Opus, a modern or new work, and Maniera Tedesca, German style. And many of us know Gothic as something dark. It wasn't meant to be. It was meant to be inspiring. There is actually so much architectural innovation in Gothic architecture. They were able to have these huge windows. They were able to have these pointed arches, thin columns. Like, for the time, it was immense architectural innovation. And the idea was for building to feel light and weightless and allow light to go in. That's actually, you know, when there is sometimes light and clouds and it looks like angels are coming down because of how light bounces. That's what Gothic buildings and those windows do. That's actually why churches really liked it later. But anyway, why we know them as dark? Partially of how they were perceived, more in Gothic literature section, but also because of candles. They used a lot of candles. Candles cost soot, and they become just darker. And in 1700s, starting in England, interest in medieval returned. People wanted something different, and medieval period was mysterious and chaotic, so people were really interested, and they started restoring buildings and building new. And when they were restoring buildings, architects and historians of the time needed to define the style, and that's when they defined Gothic architecture as separated it from Romanesque medieval architecture. So by 19th century, Gothic architecture was widely adopted, especially in England, by government in charge and very well known there. And this period was called Gothic Revival. Also, Gothic architecture, as we just learned, is not one period. We have early Gothic, High Gothic, Late Gothic, and there is also a difference between regions. So, for example, in France, it was called, there is a flamboyant Gothic. In England, there was perpendicular Gothic, and there are many more variations. I just had very little space, and I like this name the best. So I used this window to show that the idea was to have a lot of light. And yeah, I wanted to describe this historical that when we talk about Gothic, we actually talk about two periods. That's actually why I think the argument people make why we cannot build Gothic or like Baroque architecture right now is because it wouldn't be Baroque is stupid. Because yes, they wouldn't be technically Baroque, but it would be like Baroque inspired, or if it would become popular, we could name it like Baroque Revival or Second Gothic Revival. So that's not the reason. The bigger reason is that money used to build those buildings were from governments or rich people. And can you imagine modern governments agreeing to spend that much money? Meaning that hiring architects, some maybe do, maybe we should convince them. But those projects were expensive, people were mistreated, money were mismanaged. And right now we have a lot of transparency and human rights, so a totally separate problem. I still think we should do that, but it's a bit harder, and not because it wouldn't be called Gothic. So I have 2 more pages on Gothic architecture. One, I just wanted to show how beautiful it is, just includes one. And this, I like this picture by the way, but here I'm describing the key elements. So let me read some parts. Strong vertical lines. Use of available building materials. We mentioned that like Gothic in different regions was different. It's because, for example, in Italy they were using marble, in France coarse-grained stone, and in North Germany bricks, and therefore they looked slightly different. They had large stained glass windows, pointed arches, rib vaults, and flying buttresses. I don't know how to describe. These are like this thing that support ceiling in buildings. I'm really bad at explaining, you can research, but basically it's part of those like innovation to make this tall building stand, but they also were visual elements that were seen, and they had a lot of ornate decorations. They had like vines and foliage and leaves and grapes, and also occasional gargoyles, which had actually very practical use. They were used to direct water from the roof. I think this is the easiest Gothic architecture thing we can restore. I think it cannot be that much more expensive to put a gargoyle on top where water is drained. Like how much more expensive it is. I think we can afford it. And then we move to Gothic fiction. Let me show you a page. I was struggling the most because there is so much text. I think all of it is important. So because people got interested in medieval times, it was reflected also in fiction. And this fiction called Gothic for 2 reasons. First of all, that's due to how medieval times were perceived as, something got in my eye, as dark, barbaric, but also because many of this literature was based or had a significant location, a Gothic building. Like, think Dracula. A lot of things happen in Dracula castle. We are not described castle specifically, but I would think many of us imagine Gothic style of architecture. And I found no like very specific definition of this genre, but one I liked is Gothic literature is genre fiction that romanticizes the aesthetic of fear and haunting. The depiction of horrifying events. I read also a lot of analysis of Gothic fiction for this and other reasons, and one I really liked is that horrifying events displayed in Gothic fiction often serves a metaphorical expression of psychological or social conflicts, often covering themes of good, evil, powerlessness, and uncertainty. Genre often has a lot of erotic tension and subtext, and is often equated pursuit of desire with danger and forbidden nature. I recently watched analysis of Dracula, and this like uncertainty very well shown in the Dracula, one of those like how people perceived foreigners, that they will come and take care of women. Like, I don't want to say a lot because it's not my analysis and it's not the video for that, but yes, it is. Another thing that many mention is that Goth genre allows readers to revel in emotion, fantasy, fear, and thrill without requiring reason. And as period before that was all about like logic, people wanted changes, people wanted to feel. And what I really wanted to include is often plot of Gothic novels include innocent victim. In Dracula, it's John Harker. The damsel in distress is not Mina, it's John Harker. This is not up to the argument. This is topic for another day, but harassing malicious figures, gradually going insane threat of supernatural, castles, religious buildings, remote locations, forest, Gothic buildings, internal conflict, vengeful persecution, imprisonment, murder, tales within tales, change generators, discovered manuscripts, dislike states, dreams, vision, omens, unnatural echoes or silences, unintelligible writings, nocturnal landscapes, and of course vampires, monsters, demonic possession, and ghosts. I love it. However, I have one more page before my outro is goth music and subculture, because when I talk about style of clothes, while actually do mean also gothic, I probably meant more goth. And what they have to do with Gothic architecture. So, in 1978 and 1982, in post-punk scene of music of UK, there was some music emerged that had a bit darker themes and was more atmospheric. And one guy, in 1979, Martin Hannett described Manchester post-punk band Joy Division as gothic. And this description spread in the popular media and include number of bands exploring distinct gloomy themes. And while, so subgenre was based around this style of music in post-punk style, and while this subculture is not political inherently, more music based, it actually have very strong undercurrent of cynicism towards mainstream norms, manifested as a focus on individuality and self-expression over fitting in. This is one of the icons of the time. I'm embarrassed even trying to pronounce her name. Sosio. I hope that's her name. If you Google goth icons of those period, she will be there. She was iconic. And style of dress, you probably all know how they look, but they draw on glam rock, punk, new wave, and fashion from earlier periods such as Victorian, Edwardian, Belle Epoque eras, but it also draws inspiration from B-movies, Gothic literature, horror films, vampire cults, and traditional mythology. And that's not all. There are so much more to research and what I found. So I have last page is other things to research. This include goth typeface. So there is a specific style of typography called gothic. There is gothic films. Some of them are really amazing. I have not seen many, but I do want to watch more. Goth subculture subtypes, because goth is not like one subculture. Within it, there are styles. There is mall goth, there is Edwardian goth, very interesting to research. Gothic architecture structural elements. When I mentioned those two architecture elements, I couldn't explain. Like there are whole illustrations for all the parts. It's really interesting. Gothic music. You can listen to it. There are modern Gothic also artists, but they're all classic Gothic music. Goth icons, obviously, including, I hope your name is Sosio, otherwise I'm very wrong. But there are many other very famous that had immense influence musicians. Moral panic, when people went goth, there was people who were panicking that everyone is a Satanist. That was ridiculous, but also very interesting to research. Regional Gothic, at some point on Tumblr, people started posting like Gothic, but in Texas. And people would post like cowboys, all black, or like desert in night. Or like, you know, like atmospheric Gothical elements, but with specific places in mind, which you might not stereotypically associate with Gothic. Very interesting to look at. Regional Gothic, as we mentioned, Gothic wasn't universal. It was different in different countries and places. Queerness in Gothic fiction, as well as sexuality in Gothic fiction. I found some really cool articles and then I lost them. I tried to find it because I started reading it. It was amazing. And Gothic art. So I'm so excited. I will share the link to this so you can print if you want. If you do any zines, please share with me. I love it.